All right. Well, all right. Well, all right. Well, all right, man. We about to have a discussion, a conversation. I used to joke around, be like, man, I'm from Jamaica, man. And you see, where you from, brother? From the beach, right? Near the beach. All right. All right, first things first. Welcome to CNN. CNN, not NN. CNN. I'm KirkKennedy.com. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. And if you are of the Christian tradition as I am, if you are a fear of the Lordian, a follower of the way, a believer of Jesus, of course, and all of that, if that is you, then you know that tomorrow is not promised to no one. James warned us to say, if the Lord wills, right? If the Lord allows. Tomorrow's not promised, but the day of the Lord is. The judgment seat of Revelation 20, 11 through 15 is promised to everyone. So if you're a believer, fear of the Lordian, Christian or whatever, you want to remember the future. Remember the day. That day right there, right there, right there. Remember the future right there, right there, right there, right there. Okay, let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation, please. Okay, Lucy. All right, so many of you are aware. If you're not, you've been living under a rock. All right, many of you are unaware that yesterday or the day before, yesterday, I got hip to it yesterday. I don't use Twitter that much anymore. I still have an account. Ever since Twitter turned to X, I thought they were making fun of Malcolm X, so I just stopped. No, I don't know. Twitter got boring to me. I'd rather do this with y'all. But I was made aware of this Twitter fingers war over the phrase Christ the King. What interesting. What an interesting thing to fight over. All right, so Twitter has been going bananas over Christ the King. But let's just be clear. What happens on Twitter doesn't always stay on Twitter, right? So it's become this microcosm mini culture war that has erupted. So I wasn't going to put these tweets up, but I don't even feel like doing it. All right. So let's go with I'm going to read some of these tweets just so you can see what I'm talking about. And then we're going to get into this. All right. James Lindsay, famous atheist who was such an instrumental part of the conservative Christians anti-woke platform, who platformed this dude like crazy and who did nothing but step on the necks of those who are believers shortly after that. I love it. You can't make this stuff up. All right. He said in a number of tweets, but I'll just read some of them. Here's what he said. The bulk of the response to my pointing out that Christ is King is operational like Black Lives Matter proves my point. There's no denying it. At least half of it made otherwise pointless jabs at Jews, the phrase Christ is King, which was my point. It's being used not only as an article of Christian faith, but also as a jab at Jews. Talk to some Jews. They realize it in more cases than you might realize, right? This is James Lindsay. And then there's a graphic going around Twitter that has this. I don't know if you can see it real well, right? Look at this. Christ is King, and I don't care if it makes me anti-Semitic. All right, cool. All right, then you got someone else saying this. This is James Lindsay as well. Christ is King is, in addition to its malicious uses, a Christian virtue signal. So if you say Christ is King, it's a Christian virtue signal, apparently to some. Christians say it's true, nobody else does. So should all people say Allahu Akbar? Should all people say Buddha was a real good dude? Who cares if only Christians say it? Christians believe it. All right. He says, repeating it shows you're on the team. Proud to be on the team. Christ is King. Let it be known. Right. Refuses to bring suspicions. That's why it works. Bad actors can abuse it and the lots will go on to defend it. Someone said, can you not understand the perspective that many Christians feel like their free speech is being violated? This is an important point we're going to come back to in a minute. To say that the phrase Christ is King is anti-Semitic is a way to police the speech of Christians as they would be the ones to proclaim it. How is this reality missing you? And then James Lindsay responded, some people use it in an anti-Semitic way on purpose. It is anti-Semitic. Are you being obtuse on purpose? And so forth and so forth. Candace Owens retweeted this, which kind of kicked it off. Christ is King is trending worldwide in the top 10 as Holy Week begins. Hundreds of thousands of posts, every knee. She retweeted someone else saying this. Every knee shall bow. And someone responded, not the W it appears to be. And then Jeremy Boring, who is the operating manager, co-founder with Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire, he tweeted this in response to what someone else said. Someone said this, Jeremy, I respect all that you've accomplished and all you continue to do at Daily Wire. I'm a loyal supporter. I just don't think people should let bad people hijack the phrase Christ is King. Christ is King. Jeremy responds, of course not. Christ is King. I said it in my post. Say it loud, say it proud. If you mean it that Christ is King, Jesus Christ is King. If you have other motives, if you are trying to express your hate or disdain for someone or promote evil for yourself or your gang or justify some evil by taking the Lord's name instead, right? Two more tweets, right? Someone said, two things can be true. Genuine followers of our Lord Jesus and Savior should proclaim Christ as King and use it as a heartfelt expression of your faith in him, quoting Philippians 1:15-18. The second thing that can be true, Christ is King is being used in vain, Exodus 27, by a large number of Christless conservatives, influencers, and other bad actors who are jumping on the trend. They are committing a grave sin. It is being proclaimed out of selfish ambition, right? He quotes Philippians 2. That's the wrong passage, my friend. But anyway, I digress. And then here's what James Lindsay, Jeremy Boring, co-founder of Daily Wire, said this. How is saying Christ is King anti-Semitic? These are his words. The same way anything becomes anti-Semitic when it is used for the purposes of expressing anti-Semitism. It's like asking, how does a shovel become a murder weapon when it is used to murder someone? This isn't hard. A shovel is not innately a murder weapon. Saying Christ and King is not innately anti-Semitic. It's all about how a thing is used. Saying eat some cornbread, and it's funny that he went here. Listen to where he went. Saying eat some cornbread is not racist if I say to my 3-year-old when she is refusing her dinner, if I start saying it as a response to X posts by black commentators I don't like, it has taken on a meaning beyond what is innate. In other words, it is connotatively racist, not denotably racist. So too, Christ the King may be anti-Semitic in connotation, not in denotation when it's being used to express anti-Semitism. Oh, let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Twitter wars, Christ is King. Let's have a conversation about this. All right. So all of this is in response to Candace Owens not being on Daily Wire. What happened after she left Daily Wire was one of the contributors to Daily Wire, Messianic Jew, Andrew Clavin, did about an hour-long video. About 40 minutes of it was explaining from his perspective why Candace Owens was fired, essentially let go. And his you can go watch it. I'm not going to put a link up. I don't feel like it. But his response was essentially this, that when you take a swipe at the Jews who are Christ's chosen people, you are taking a swipe at Christ. So he was the first one that I heard make the connection that what Candace Owens did was taking a swipe at Christ with the Jews. Now, months ago, Candace Owens just tweeted, Christ is King. And then that became, and people interpreted that as a pushback because there was some stuff going on between her and Ben Shapiro in the Twitterverse that was essentially a reaction to statements she made about the IDF and genocide and all these things, right? And then she did go after, she said to someone, I think it was a rabbi, if I'm not mistaken, that are you drinking the blood of Christians? An old, really anti-Semitic statement, right? That was aiming at saying Jews are drinking the blood of Christians. All right, with that background, with all of that nonsense, let's now have a real conversation. First and foremost, Christ is King is not anti-Semitic. It's just not, all right? Now, you can use anything in any way as a weapon. You can weaponize any phrase. If I said things, depending on the context in which you say anything, it could be taken a certain way. If you could make any phrase a sexual innuendo if that's what you're thinking of, right? So if you're talking to your spouse and you say, "Hey babe, I can't wait to get home and put them dishes away," depending on how the context, your perception of the context will know what you mean. Everyone else will be like, "Oh man, you excited to put away dishes? You daggone right." Right? You could anything. So could Christ is King be anti-Semitic? Sure. But that's a heart issue, not a phraseology issue. That's an issue of the heart of the person, not a phraseology issue. Now, when Candace tweeted Christ is King, was she being anti-Semitic? They definitely think so, Daily Wire, and other people do, and then there's some who do not, right? The problem with this statement is Candace Owens, if I remember the tweet correctly, and if I'm wrong, Ruslan will correct me. Just the homie, he'll come in and be like, "Hey," he'll check me real quick. "Hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this." We want to make sure I'm on point. I appreciate that. But if I'm not mistaken, all she tweeted was Christ is King, right? They took that to be anti-Semitic. Now, Jesus had the ability to know what was in people's hearts. I don't know if Candace Owens said Christ the King when she said that was being anti-Semitic. But the reason why people think it was anti-Semitic is because of who Candace Owens really is. So let's just keep it 1,000, right? Let's keep it 1,000. If you like Candace Owens, cool. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan, but she does say stuff I do agree with. So I'm not going to pretend like I don't like nobody for real, but Christ is King. But King Jesus, I don't like no. But I mean, she says some stuff I do agree with. There's stuff she says I do agree with. So I'm not going to pretend like, and there's stuff I don't agree with, right? So that's just what it is. But here's the reality. Candace Owens is not a martyr for Jesus. So if you're a conservative Christian, please don't deceive yourself into thinking that that's what this is. If you defend Candace Owens, you're not defending your faith. Candace Owens is not a martyr for Jesus. And the Daily Wire's primary offense is not about Christ being king. This is a smokescreen. And when we get at the end of this video, I'm explaining to you the real issue. There's a much deeper issue going on here. And I've watched all these videos just to see, is anybody tracking? And I'm not saying I'm special, different, nothing. I am cool though. I'm just like a cool dude. But I'm just saying, I'm not seeing anybody that I've seen, and I haven't seen a lot, so take for what it's worth, making this connection. And I think this is where a lot of Christians have fallen short and why there's so much animosity between Christians and people who disagree with them. That's not the Daily Wire's primary offense. Look, this is about, and let me just say this real quick, because we're entering an election year, and here's what's going to happen. People think, listen, the people you imitate, from God's perspective, I believe the people you imitate are greater than the policies you advocate for. Who you imitate, the character that you imitate is greater to God than the policies you advocate for. All right? That's the reality. So let's go back to this. Candace Owens is not a martyr for Jesus. All right? Candace Owens is a Catholic at best, based on her own profession. So she's a professing believer in Catholicism, which believes in Jesus, but we have to judge a tree by the fruit that it bears, right? That's all we have. We don't know. I'm not the Lord. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. But when you're a Christian, it doesn't matter how popular you are. Whatever. If you're a Christian and you're out there in front of more people, then your Christianity will be evaluated more significantly. I'm a pastor in my church. I'm a pastor to the people who watch this. My sins are going to be greater than anyone else's sins in my church because of who I am. So when you are popular and you're a Christian, you're going to be under scrutiny, should be under scrutiny more than most people, right? Because you have notoriety. She has notoriety, millions of followers, right? Candace Owens is not a martyr for Jesus. Here's the reality. Candace Owens, and said this herself and others, Candace Owens is an advocate for conservative free speech, not biblical free speech. So let's start there. Candace Owens is an advocate for conservative, constitutional free speech, not biblical free speech. Candace Owens, her issue is not free speech. And I've seen Christians like the tweet I read, what about our free speech? That is the wrong way to think about it. Yes, we want the ability to talk about the gospel, but we have to be careful what we mean by free speech. We are usually talking about what the Constitution says our First Amendment rights. The Bible does not care about the Constitution, despite the fact that people will defend it as if it was inspired by the scriptures. If it was, then help me understand why free speech, hate speech, all negative stuff, negative. They're cracking down on hate speech now, but you don't even know what hate speech is anymore. You don't know what it is. So people are like, free speech. Here's a biblical, how does free speech, and I want you, as I read these couple verses, I'm going to put them on the screen, tell me, based upon how you've seen Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro speak, right? But we'll talk about Candace is claiming to be a Christian, closer to Christian. Listen to these verses and tell me if you see these things representing Candace Owens, all right? Let's go here. Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only as such is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. I could just stop right there. Now, I have no ill will towards Candace. I don't know her. I don't have no ill will. But I call a spade, right? So I'm not questioning her motives. I'm looking at her actions. I would say from my limited vantage point that the vast majority of the time that I've seen Candace Owens speak or debate or go head-to-head with someone, it lacks this very thing. Corrupting talk, I've heard her call people stupid. She calls people 304s. Would they say hoes? You're not supposed to say that. I've seen her call people crazy things, right? Attack them with strength and rapidity. And that's free speech. And she'll defend that. That's my free speech. That's my First Amendment right. But here's our free speech right here, if you're a believer. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only as such is good for building people up. Now, I'm not saying she's never built people up. What I'm saying is the predominant way I've seen her speak and Ben Shapiro, when he's on the attack, when he's debating, when he disagrees with something, it's not this. That it may give grace to those who hear. Huh? Let's go to another verse. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you along with malice. Let's just be clear. Let's just be honest. And I'm talking to you if you support Candace Owens. I'm not saying, I get it. She's a conservative. You like that, but you're mixed. I think many Christians are mixing conservatism with Christianity, and they're not. She does not, from my limited observation, I'm not talking about her heart motive. I don't know what she does at home. She may be crying out before the Lord, but at some point that fruit needs to be seen, right? I'm not saying she never says anything gracious, but when you watch Candace Owens videos, you're not watching them expecting to see no anger, no wrath, none of that. You're not expecting to see grace, right? You're not expecting to hear no. As a matter of fact, many of us watch her because we know she's going to go in, especially if she's debating. Well, she doesn't. Most of her conversation is debating or giving a negative opinion about someone or defending someone that other people feel negative about, like a Kanye West, right? Listen to this last verse from this part. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as Christ and God forgave you. You have to be honest. I'm not saying if you defend and you like her. I don't care if you like her. I don't think Jesus cares if you like her. Can you genuinely say that this is her problem, that this is what she does? Is she kind-hearted, kind to people, tender-hearted, forgiving? Is she that? Or do you see bitterness, wrath, and anger, clamor, slander? Do you see corrupting talk coming out of her mouths? Do you see the lack of grace to those who hear? I've watched her make people look stupid. And I've watched her boast about doing it. That's what she wants to do, right? So here's the reality. Candace Owens, I do not believe is anti-Semitic. I don't think that's her problem. Here's the problem. Candace Owens is vindictive. She has a vengeful spirit. She will come after people with glee, glad to do it. And not for the good of everyone, I think for the proof that her discernment was accurate. Let me tell you why I believe this. Because when she did that Black Lives Matter mini documentary and exposed that Patrice Cullors and them had bought a $6 million mansion that she was living with the owner of Black Lives Matter, one of the founders, with her girlfriend. It was supposed to be like, oh, black people don't have nothing. And then she exposes this. And then you find out that chapters across the country were asking for funds and weren't getting those funds. And many of those chapters shut down. So I'll give her that. She exposed that. She was right. She was dead on. And I didn't bang with Black Lives Matter, the organization, at all. But you know what, though? But when Candace Owens was wrong about Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor or other things that I've heard her say about people, I don't hear her apologize. She moves on. She does not apologize, because when you apologize, when you're wrong for what you've done or said about people, as a believer, the Spirit will convict you, right? Now, you can ignore that and not submit to the Spirit, but the Spirit will convict you. So you're going to go back and ask for forgiveness or clarify what you said. You're going to say that was wrong and did that. I remember me and a guy a couple years ago, A.D. Robles, a conservative guy up in Vermont. We went head to head. He said something to me on Twitter. I reacted, and we had this back and forth for off and on for over a year. And then we decided to have a conversation on the phone because I thought it was dead. It came back to life. We had a conversation on the phone, and the Lord did an amazing work on that. I still never talked about what really happened, but at one point on our conversation, the Lord brought clarity to something that he misunderstood what I was saying. And when he got clarity, he was emotionally affected. And when he was emotionally affected, I got emotionally affected. And me and this guy we were both crying. We were weeping on the phone because we realized we were just dishonored the Lord in the way that we related to each other. You know, since then, I've just pulled back on a lot of the kind of stuff that I say and do online. I am a tough guy. I'm not afraid. I'm an ex-gangster. I'm not afraid. I want all the smoke. I used to say that. Now, I don't want to do that because that stuff doesn't honor the Lord. Ain't nothing wrong with being passionate and all of that, but being offensive, mocking people, all of that stuff, I was like, I don't want no parts of that. And to his credit, he didn't do that with me either. I appreciate him. Now, somebody sent me recently a video that he still seems like he's doing his thing on that side. But as far as me and him, we squashed it because we're like believers. That takes precedent. When Christ is king, the character that Christ calls you to have takes more precedent than the ideology that you're proposing, right? And that's my problem with Candace Owens. Candace Owens is not anti-Semitic. She's just vindictive. Or to be biblical, I think Candace Owens is rude. I think she insists on her own way. I think she's irritable and resentful. And I'm not being judgmental. These are things that I've seen. If I had I do this by myself. When I do these videos, I think about it, put some stuff up, I record, and I just go. I don't have no script, no nothing. But if I had a team of people, I would put together I don't know what they call it, collage of things that she said that are just for hours, I bet, of just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Her mentor was Larry Elder, another dude who just goes, I don't even know if Larry Elder's a believer, but they just go after people, especially the left, right? So that's the problem. This is the issue with what's going on. And this is why I think when she tweeted Christ is King, now I don't know her heart, but I can see why Jeremy Boring and who co-founder of Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Andrew Clay, I can see why they said what they said. I can see why, because they know she's vindictive. She's vengeful. She's rude. And vindictive is like, man, I'm going to get revenge. So you say something to me, I'm going to tweet. Like, you know, in the rap world, right? For a long time, like when Jay-Z and Nas had this beef in 2001, when Jay-Z put out Takeover in the spring and Nas came out a couple months later and put out Ether. Until Jay-Z put out Takeover, many people had maybe heard that they didn't like each other, were beefing, but it wasn't clear. Like he did a lot of these subliminals. When you rap, like rap music was founded on like, I'm a better MC, I'm a better rapper than you, I'm a better dresser than you, I look better than you, I dance better, I can take your girls, like you a sucker MC. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was based on that competitive spirit. Like, I'm better than you, essentially. You would be talking to unknown rappers. If you were me, I'm just like, oh, he thinks he's better than everyone. But there were times he was talking about Nas and other people. And then finally, when he said Nas's name, it became clear. Candace Owens and these people are very much like that. They do a lot of subliminals. They don't say the name. You don't know who they are until it becomes clear, right? It's clear who we talking about now. I don't know when she said Christ the King if that was anti-Semitic. What I know is she has a history, and these people know her. They hired her. She can be vengeful, vindictive, and so there were already public back and forths going on between her and Ben and different people rabbis who were pushing back against what she was saying. So I can see why they thought that. Whether they were right or not, I don't know, because to say someone is anti-Semitic, I think using Christ as king, it would have to be you understand the motive of the person. So I don't think her issue is that she's not a martyr for Jesus. I think, if anything, she's reaping what she's sown, to be honest. And Daily Wire, they're reaping what they've sown. They both have mocked the left, anything related to racism. I don't like to say Black Lives Matter because they were a evil organization in many ways with evil intention that tried to hijack a historical argument that had been lost by some advancements since the 1960s. There were still legitimate concerns that people made. And the reason why, because people are still sinful, right? And they came in and they swooped in and decided to take over the conversation, and they were just, so I couldn't stand that they did that. But I watched them mock and shoot down anything. I mean, it was rarely an occasion where I would see Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens give they would acknowledge, yeah, racism still exists, of course. But it seemed like you couldn't, but which one do you agree with? Which one is racist to you, Ben? Is that good? When the Derek Chauvin thing first happened, he acknowledged, hey, he shouldn't have did that. that was terrible. It was horrible. But in short, so again, I think they're reaping what they've sown. They've made a media conglomerate, right? They've made a platform out of tearing down people with good, aggressive, angry, condescending arguments. And now that argument is happening with each other. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. All right. So if you are a believer, let me tell you two things, right? One, why you should be encouraged, why this should encourage this Christ the King, this thing that's just going crazy right now. Let me tell you why you should be encouraged, and let me tell you what the deeper issue is that we have to pay attention to. All right. Here's the reality. Christ the King, Christ is King. This is happening during Passion Week, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening. I mean, God, if you believe, I don't care what your theology is, you got to believe that God is in control. If you're not reformed and you don't believe God is sovereign, cool. But you got to believe God's in control. Everything isn't just happening. God is in control. The fact that Christ the King is trending on Twitter and elsewhere in conversation during Passion Week. Friday is Good Friday. We celebrate that. We're having a service at my church Friday night. Sunday is Easter, the resurrection, the most important Christian day of the year, right? Christ is King is trending. That's amazing to me. That's amazing. I don't care if Candace Owens kicked it off or it's because of these two people that may or may not be genuine believers. I could care less. What I care about is the phrase Christ is King is out there. I love it. This is, and I think every believer should always celebrate these things, right? This little war it's not about a biblical view of Jesus. It's about a cultural view of Jesus, all right? But Christ is King is happening during Passion Week. But don't get it twisted, right? We know what we mean by Christ is King. I think the timing of it, even though this little war is more about a cultural view than a biblical view, right? This isn't about a biblical view. And this cultural Jesus war has been happening for a long time. You got on the left, the cultural Jesus, the Christ is King that they're talking about is a pro-gay refugee who is for all of their democratic policies, who wants people to have choices, free choices, even if it means killing the life inside of them. All these different things, right? If you're on that side, then that's your Christ is King. That's a cultural Jesus. And the right is the same way. Their Jesus is a free speech promoting, gun toting, Western free market capitalistic God who supports business and entrepreneurship, and that's what he wants, and he promotes gun laws and the right to have free speech. Man, the Lord doesn't care about free speech if we're going to use it to be sinful, right? We're not. That's not what we do. We're supposed to use our free speech to like pray for our enemies, to honor the emperor, right? This is wars over a cultural Jesus, not a biblical Jesus. The biblical Jesus, Christ is King. The cultural Jesus, I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean. Because I think for them, this is about policy. This is about policies. For me, it's about person. I want to imitate the person of Jesus. I'm not advocating for the policies of people who have values that are closer to Jesus. That's not what it's about. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's not what it's about. But having said that, why we can rejoice that this is happening. Listen to what Paul said in Philippians 1. And I stand by, I think this was so, God is incredible, bro. God's word is ridiculous with it. Knowing all the stuff that will happen. Listen to what Paul says about this type, when this stuff is happening. Here's what he says. Listen to this. Don't make me laugh. Here's what he says. The former proclaimed Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my punishment, right? And he says, what then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice, right? So he says there are some people who are preaching the gospel out of genuine love and affection. They are proclaiming Jesus. But then there are some who are doing it out of selfish ambition. Now, for Paul, he was saying they were doing it to afflict him because they were false apostles teaching truths, acting like they're on the same level as Paul and trying to influence Christians that Paul had gotten their theology from Paul. This is what Corinthians and Galatians, all this stuff was about, all this, right? So Paul's saying there are people who for selfish ambition are trying to afflict him in his punishment, but that's contextually. Principally, there are people who preach out of selfish ambition. We see this all the time. We usually attribute it like pastors who have popular platforms that don't teach sound doctrine, right? But he says, what then? Only in every way, whether in pretense or truth, Christ is proclaiming, in that I rejoice. The same way I felt about when Kanye West got saved, when he professed faith. I didn't, at the moment, it wasn't that I didn't care if it was real. It just wasn't my issue. I was excited to see a dude like Kanye West promoting Jesus is King, Christ is King, right? All over the world for that period of time, that 1 year, 1.5 years. I loved it. Only because Christ is proclaimed. So when I found out that Twitter is, Christ is King is trending on Twitter during Holy Week. Remember the Harlem Shake? When them dudes, when that music come on, boom, doom, 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 doom. That's what I felt like when I was hearing that. It was like doom, 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 doom. Christ the King is trending on Twitter. Man, I don't care. I don't care. I want to hear Christ is King all day, baby. So if you're doing it out of selfish ambition, I don't care if you're doing it. I liked the phrase, because you know why? That phrase can affect someone. That phrase can affect someone. Someone could, there are people who have walked away from the faith someone may have a conversation with them just because Christ is King is trending. There's a boldness to talk about Christ when his name is out there more. And so I'm praying, Lord, give me opportunities to do that. I want to talk more about Christ this week. Your name is out there. Let's get it. I'm always around believers because I'm a pastor. I might go to the grocery store and be like, hey, as a matter of fact, I might go grab me a sweet tea. I know I don't need it. I might go and be like, hey, bro, did you see that the Christ is King is trending? What you think about that? Oh, man, I don't get into that. Let me tell you why it's true, though. Why can't we do that? Like, take advantage of it. Christ is King is trending on Passion Week. My homie said, man, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Man, I'm 10 inches with it. I'm touching it, right? Because this is good. Good. Let these people, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Go ahead and be anti-Semitic with it if you want. I'm going to use it in a way, and I think people can be saved by this. So that's the reality. I think all Christians, when a celebrity professes faith, rejoice. Not because, oh my gosh, they're so cool, I love their music. Not because they're saved, but because they have a platform to talk about Christ who saves. That's where we get it mixed up. We get so caught up on the person and we're so excited and now we want to follow and support everything the person does. No, I'm excited about the message. I support what you're saying about Jesus, because if you don't persevere to the end, I don't know if you're really saved. We all can have confidence of our salvation, but we're both saved and being saved. So I'm not getting excited about this dude because he's popular. I want to see what he's going to say. I'm going to support that statement. I support that Sunday service, Kanye West. I support what you said on this album, Kanye West. But if you walk away, you still said these things. I don't support Candace Owens, but I support Christ is King as a tweet. All right, let me end with this. Let me tell you the deeper issue. And this is what I feel like I'm surprised. Well, actually, I'm not surprised, because I think we have a very shallow view. Christians in America in particular have a very shallow view of what's really happening in the world. We're so inundated within our world that we don't really understand it. And the Bible has said this hand over fist. Let me tell you the deeper issue that if you are of the Christian tradition, you need to be paying attention to when all things, but especially when stuff like this happens. Here's a deeper issue. This is not going to be unfamiliar to you. I've said this before. You should know this verse well. Ephesians 6:12. Here's what Paul says. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. All right? He says we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, right? So he's talking about we're not arguing against, we're not fighting against other human beings. This is what he's saying. Flesh and blood is essentially other human beings. He's saying we're not arguing, look at this, we're not arguing with other human beings. He's saying, look, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the power. These are all sort of demonic hierarchies, right? Cosmic powers of darkness over evil. He said, we're not wrestling with them. We're wrestling with these cosmic powers of darkness that are against the spiritual forces in the heavenly places. Let me tell you why this is important. You know, there's a movie called Usual Suspects that had this infamous line, this line that is bigger than the movie. There's a point where this guy, his name is Verbal Kent, they're looking for a guy named Kaiser Soze. And he says, as Verbal Kent, doubling as Kaiser Soze, he's talking to this officer who doesn't know that he's Kaiser Soze, the guy that they're looking for. And he says, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world that he doesn't exist. Okay? If that's true, let me tell you the second greatest trick. The second greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making Christians forget that the battle is with him and the cosmic powers of darkness, not other human beings. That's the second greatest trick. Why do you think Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself and pray for your enemies? Because you cannot hate people that you are asking God to bless. Because hate is not becoming of a believer. I did a video a couple of videos ago talking about Matthew 12, where 12 and 13, where Jesus says this. He says, because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end will be saved, right? So Jesus is saying, because evil will be more available, be around more, people's love will go cold. You're going to get tired. You're going to get angry at evil. And this is the culture we live in. Cancel culture, everything. All of it. Remember how much Ben Shapiro were going after cancel culture? Well, you just canceled Candace Owens. So you forfeited your cancel culture card. Maybe. But the reality is this. There is a supernatural war where 2 Timothy 2:26 makes it clear that non-Christians have been taken captive to do the devil's will. And so it says, so the 2:25, it says, look, the servant of God must not be quarrelsome, but patient and enduring, gently instructing his opponents, right? With gentleness, perhaps God may grant them repentance since they have been taken captive. But we always think it's the left. It's the LGBT community. It's the right. It's the white supremacists. It's whoever it is, right? It's Daily Wire. It's Candace Owens. It's Elon Musk. It's Kanye. It's always a person. The Bible has told us Listen, we need to pray for people because they are under the captivity of Satan. The world does not, 1 Corinthians 5, Paul said, look, beginning in verse 9, he said, look, I told you not to associate with the sexually immoral idolaters and stuff of this world. He said, I did not mean the world, for else you'd have to go out of the world. I meant don't associate with those who proclaim to be a brother or sister who are sexually immoral. He said, have nothing to do with them, right? He said, for what have I to do with judging outsiders, non-Christians? He said, God judges the outside. Purge the evil from among you. The Bible does not, but you'll see many even Christian influencers making all these videos about the sins that non-Christians are committing, and we sit there shaking our heads. Fam, what else are they supposed to do? They don't have Jesus. And if the people who do have Jesus aren't praying for them, then we don't care about them, right? So it's just like, it's almost like we want people to go to hell. And so we rejoice. That's why most of what we watch on YouTube is all gossip, right? Most of what you watch on YouTube is all gossip. It's, let me give you the tea about these people. Let's talk about these people. Let's talk about these people. Let's talk about these people. It's just gossip. Because what we care about are the dirty deeds that people commit so we can self-righteously judge them. And not even realizing that the lawlessness has many of our hearts growing cold. When he said, he who endures to the end will be saved, we have to endure in loving people, even though lawlessness is increasing. That's what's missing. So in all these wars and all these battles, I ain't trying to hear none of it. I don't care about none of it because it doesn't mean anything. It's not helping me grow. It's not helping me honor the Lord. What I'm trying to do is pray for these folks, man. Because honestly, if they do go spend eternity without God, their biggest concern is not that their biggest sin issue was not that they advocated for policies that you and I disagree with. They advocated against, the policies aren't going to matter. It's that they don't know God and they're going to spend an eternity away from him. And let me tell you, the lawlessness has grown and our love has gotten so cold that if you and I are honest, most of us don't even care if people go to hell. If you disagree with them, you don't even care. And that's sadder than what they stand for because we are the law, salt and light. We are the light. We are children of light and we are losing our saltiness. So don't get in these arguments and fight over Christ is king and defend that. Celebrate that the phrase is out there, that Christ's name is being proclaimed. And let's pray for people who don't believe. I'm praying for Candace Owens. I'm praying for Ben Shapiro and them. I don't have no stake in the game. I don't care who's the next president. I don't care about none of that because all who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted. We're going to be persecuted no matter who's in the White House. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying vote your conscience. Don't lose your conscience for a vote. It's not about the policies you advocate. It's about the person you imitate. Are we imitators of Jesus or do we care more about some policies that a non-Christian is advocating? We should never care more about who people vote for than who people believe in. We want people to be saved. If that leads to better policies, sweet. There are Christians in other countries that don't even have the luxury to change the way their governments work, and they still honor the Lord. We can too, right? So again, in summation, this is not about a biblical view of Christ as King. That's not what this is. Candace Owens is not a martyr for Jesus. People you imitate are greater than policies you advocate. That's just it. Free speech in the conservative realm is not this speech. It's not. I see a much corrupting talk, unwholesome talk, depending on the conversation, come out of people's mouths. The reality is that this little war that they're fighting over is not about a biblical view of Jesus, but a cultural one. But we know the truth, and so we can, even in a dumb crisis king debate online, we can still celebrate the fact that Christ is proclaimed. All right, take that with a grain of salt unless you got high blood pressure. You know what I'm saying? And then we'll go from there. All right, let me check some of the comments. Let's look at some of the comment section. Let's get it. Ugh. I'm not sure what I said to make that face. Golly. I think of that verse every time I hear her speak. I'm not sure what verse, but I can't remember what I said. I definitely see the lack of grace and pride in her. Well said, bro. Man, I don't see none of that. All right. I disagree. Why do people have the right to be nice? The left has been mean and rude for decades. As soon as the right starts calling out the mess of the past, I think again, I don't know you. I don't know what your heart is, but I think this is a very conservative response. Why are you so worried about what the left does? Like this isn't about this. What view of country are we so worried about losing? We're going to heaven. Like, what are we like? Why are we acting like okay, don't get me wrong. Sure, I want my kid. I got 3 kids, 3 boys. Sure, I want them to grow up in the world as people, but I'm preparing them for a world that's not. My hope is not in a political manifestation that saves our country. The saving of America is not politically based. It's salvific. And so I'm not saying you're wrong to not want that, but who cares how mean the left is? The right is mean too. If you don't believe it, it's not about niceness, right? I'm passionate. I'm not upset. I appreciate what you're saying. The niceness is not the issue. Meanness is not the issue. It's who believes in Jesus, and do we care about that? If you hate the left so much, make sure you pray for them, Proverbs 31. Pray for them, because that's what Jesus commands. He doesn't command you to be like, yeah, but look, soon as we start, who cares? What do you mean we? The we that I'm with is the we that's attached to Jesus, that believes in Jesus. And I promise you, I believe this with all my heart. When we get to heaven, there will be Republicans, Democrats, independents, people who knew nothing about these categories, all worshiping Jesus. Don't be deceived by these man-made realities. This is not about a biblical view of Jesus. People who don't know the Lord are going to be mean. That's the point that Paul was saying in 1 Corinthians 5. So Christ is king. I love it. And he is. I do. People are going to take it and run with it. Well said. But let them run with it. I don't care. Let them run with it. Very good level-headed response. Thank you. This was, she said it before I just said what I said. I hope she still feels that way. When is your video on Kendrick versus Drake beef, Pastor? Tomorrow. That's coming tomorrow, brother. Kendrick versus Drake. We're going to have to talk about that. All right. I think Obama's daughter is a lot more mature, Candace. I guess than Candace. She has a hood ratness to her. So I'm assuming that you're saying Obama's daughter is a lot more mature than Candace, because Candace has a hood ratness to her. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to say this. I could be wrong. So let me qualify this. I am probably wrong about what I'm about to say. But I know this is trend with black people, especially when they marry somebody white. So this is just me. I'm not saying everyone does this, but this is just my thought. Because you said this, I want to respond to this hood ratness. This is what I think. I think part of Candace Owens is, I think her black card in her mind is the brashness, the rudeness, the all of that, the hood ratness, which you described, which I think we went through biblically what that is, insisting on your own way, rude, all this stuff, right? I think that she is that way partly because she's married to someone white. I don't know why this is, well, I think I know why it is. But for some black people, when they marry somebody white, because of the historical connotation, they tend to have to be more black than they normally would be, because they're going to get flack for marrying somebody white. Candace Owens is in the public eye and so forth. And so I think that she's just going to get a lot of pushback because she married a white dude. And so her hood ratness, as you described, I think is just a reaction to trying to maintain the blackness, which is amazing. If I'm right, which is incredible, because she and others would be like, well, I don't have the narrative. That's not my narrative about racism and all that. So anyway, I just think it's hilarious that they try to do that. All right, let me go here. They try to sell us on righteousness versus justice. Jesus was big on both. Brother, 100%. I think it's hilarious that people act like what we called social justice was somehow innately unbiblical. Now, don't get me wrong. There were unbiblical ways the left was trying to force things out, right? But here's the thing. Let me just say that, man, y'all got me. Y'all gonna have me up here doing one of these 2-hour videos. Let me just say this, man, because we talking right now, right? Let me just say something. Here's the reality, right? Even if equity was wrong, it was a bad move to the left, which I think in many ways equity was a stupid pursuit. This is just me. I think it was a stupid pursuit. But we have to understand where these things come from. People act like Black Lives Matter, the pursuit of equity, these things were somehow came out of nowhere. No, they are the result of hundreds of years of oppression towards people. I don't care if slavery ended a long time ago. The consequences of actions far exceed the actions themselves, right? Far exceed that. I mean, Jesus, remember when Jesus said, the men of Nineveh will rise up and judge this generation, right? That was their act. That was a long time ago. But he said their faithfulness and repentance is carrying over and shaming you all, right? Like we act like America was a neutral country and black people just chose to go to the hood, chose these things, right? And then we get upset when people don't just accept the American dream in the way it was presented. I mean, women couldn't even have bank accounts until 1970. You know, we talk about, in 1967, Martin Luther King did an interview with, I forgot the dude's name. It's on YouTube. Go look at 1967 interview. This was 11 months before he was assassinated. And they asked him about, what did he think of the March on Washington and the most recent Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, and I think there was another one that was coming. And he basically said, yeah, I was a bit naive in that March on Washington. Go look this up on YouTube. He said, we had momentum and everything, so we were excited, but what's proven is that the government has not kept its promises. These things have not changed and so forth. That's why he was still marching and stuff, which got him killed almost a year later after that interview. Listen, there have been a lot of progress and stuff, but there have been detrimental things. If you harm a child, right? Let's just say a child is treated horribly at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, right? And you could say, okay, now the child is 25 years old. 20 years ago, all that happened. You wouldn't typically say to a person, why are you still acting like that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago? No, you understand that there are consequences for things that have happened to people that carry on long after them. That's in the Bible, right? Even God at one point said, I'm judging the sins of the father against future generations, right? There were sins that carried long after the actions that happened, right? People in the Israelites, the first generation had to stay 40 years put. Moses couldn't go either, right? But then over time, so I'm not saying that Black Lives Matter was right. I didn't bang with them at all, right? I'm not saying all the demand. What I'm saying is we act like these things are coming out of nowhere. I understood why people were going for equity. I just thought it wasn't a realistic goal. But don't act like equality has been the main thing either. That's still a recent reality, right? And the laws that changed in the civil rights didn't change the heart. So anyway, I just think a lot of people aren't realistic about it. I didn't agree with a lot of that was coming out, but I understood where it was coming from. We've denied people things, and there are consequences for that. There are consequences. Man, someone could say something to you and hurt your feelings and affect the way you think about yourself for the rest of your life. I mean, how many people are in therapy now who were mistreated 30 years ago? Let's not act like that these things just go away. No, it may not be your struggle, but some people carry with them hurts and pains that last a long time. And we minimize it by thinking they should just get over it. Or we point out, well, look at the problems in your community. But those problems anyway, I'm in the weeds now. I just think that Jesus cared about justice. He cared about it. And I think he cared about, as a matter of fact, lastly, I'll say this. One of the things that American Christianity has done is make being poor a moral issue. All right? It's a moral issue. You're poor is a moral issue. Here's what I would ask any of you to do, especially if you're on the conservative side of things and you're a Christian. Get a good concordance or get Logos or some kind of software that makes this easy to do, right? Look up the word poor in your Bible. Look up all the times that it's used in the Bible, right? And then look at all of the things that God says about the poor and people who are poor. And then ask yourself, is that the way we think about the poor in modern day America right now? We make poor a moral issue. A moral issue. Yes, my brother. Sin has a ripple effect. In 1 Peter, this is what he says. This is always This is, I hope I find this because I'm doing it live and I'm just, but First Peter, I think he says this. I want to say it's right here. And he says this, where's this bad boy at? Don't do it to me, baby. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And he says you inherited this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, there's this verse in this joint that's like, I was like, wow, this is a crazy joint. Oh, yeah, here we go. Your boy was right, verse 18. This is what he says. Let me go back one verse, 17. This is 1 Peter 1, 17, 18. This is what he says right here. Here's what Jesus says. This is going to go with sin has ripple effects, right? American sin has ripple effects. I'm sorry. And it still reverberates. And this is a Christian nation, right? 1 Peter 1, 17, 18. Put this on your heart. And if you call on him as Father, who judges impartially, according to each one's deeds, conduct yourselves with fear throughout the time of your exile, knowing that you were ransomed from the futile ways you inherited from your forefathers. Listen to this. Knowing that you were ransomed, this is Peter saying, conduct yourselves with fear of the Lord, right? Knowing that you were ransomed from the futile ways you inherited from your forefathers. Racism, slavery ended in 1865, right? Then why was there Jim Crow for 100 years? If that Civil War did it? Because it did not, right? So there's a bunch of things that we've inherited, these attitudes and actions and all these things. And it takes Christ to cleanse us. Policies never change people. The law doesn't change people, just ask the Jews from the Old Testament, right? It just doesn't. So my point is this. I'm not saying I agree with a lot of the left, or there's things I agree with and I understand where they're coming from. There's a lot I was like, man, I don't want to hear none of that. There's some stuff I agree with on the right. There's some stuff they got it right. I'm sorry, they just got it right. But then there's stuff I just don't bang with because you dudes are just, y'all folks are wilding right now. So sin has ripple effects, and they have ripple effects in our own personal lives. We all have habits and patterns that have carried with us for a long time. We have them, right? And that's just what we got to fight through. So all that to say, look, I appreciate y'all watching. Like and subscribe. You know, we're at 3K right now, but we're just over 3K. So you can't really celebrate it until you get a little bit more. Because when you be like, yeah, we made the 3K, then 10 people will drop off and now you're back to 2.9. Don't do that. But if you do, it doesn't matter to me because I'm not doing this for the growth. I'm doing this for the growth in character, not growth in subscribers. And if subscribers grow, thank you. But if they don't, I'm good before the Lord. All right? Appreciate y'all, man. Have a good one. Don't forget what this is really about. We do not wrestle with flesh and blood. Don't get caught up in which side thinks this or does that. Or everyone outside of Jesus is controlled by the devil. They have and we have to help them. We have to help them grow. All right? Love you guys. Pew. See you when I see you. See you tomorrow for that Kendrick Drake joint. Well, we're going to get into